Hey, good afternoon, everyone. As you know, the Department of the Army announced today force structure decisions and stationing plans for the reduction of the regular Army from 490,000 to 450,000 soldiers. This reduction of 40,000 soldiers will be accompanied by a reduction of approximately 17,000 Department of Army civilian employees. So that's the first point I wanted to make sure that you all understood. The second is these decisions were driven, as you well know, predominantly by the fiscal constraints resulting from the Budget Control Act of 2011 and the defense strategic and budgetary guidance that we have been given and will take place, these cuts, over the next two fiscal years, so fiscal years 16 and 17. We expect, good news is that we expect that the impacts to both Army Materiel Command and Redstone Arsenal to be minimal. And I can go into more in detail on that during questions and answers. I want to assure you, though, that we as an Army remain postured and as a command to carry out current missions to meet our requirements that are associated with the defense strategy, specifically a 450,000 soldier active component provides a sufficient force that meets all of our current demands and prepares for contingencies and required timelines. And so I wanted to make sure I stated that up front as well. The Army and Army Materiel Command remain committed and will continue to remain committed on taking care of our soldiers, our great DA civilians, and our family members. Now, I did also want to make mention of a couple of things here. First, if current law budget caps, commonly referred to as sequestration, as you all know, are not addressed, end strength will be further reduced to about 420,000 by fiscal year 2019. The resulting force would then put the Army at significant risk in being unable to execute its defense strategy. So that's what I wanted to tell you up front, and now I'll take some questions. Well, that's a great question. So there's two reasons. First, let me put it in context for you. As you know, when I mentioned the Budget Control Act of 2011, that really started the ball rolling, so to speak, in terms of prudent planning and reshaping activities for the Army. So that's really been ongoing since 2012, okay? So if you look at top end what our end strength was in 2012, it was about 570,000. And so right now, we're moving towards 490, and then with the announcement today, down to 450. The reason why it's less of an impact to Redstone is because we've already been doing prudent planning, and we feel, as does the Army, that any the cuts specifically with the DA, the Department of Army civilian workforce, could be achieved through natural attrition and through unfilled positions that we've already been planning for and working through over the last couple of years. In addition, we have some other management tools that are at our disposal, and that's voluntary early retirement, voluntary separations. And so what I really want to get across is the fact that we're not going to be giving pink slips to individuals and saying, hey, you need to turn around and go home. And it goes back to my other point that we're committed to taking care of not only our soldiers and our DA civilians, but their families as well.
Can I follow up?
Sure, absolutely.
You were talking about, let's talk about Redstone as a whole.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, can I talk about the other piece of it,
Yeah.
the second reason? So the second reason, when you juxtapose that with the fact that this is a federal center of excellence, and so, it's just not Department of the Army and it's not Department of Defense. We have NASA here, obviously Department of Justice, and so given the fact that this is a federal center of excellence with diverse and very critical capabilities for the government, I think that further reduces and mitigates the impacts to Redstone.
You don't think
That's another great question. I'm talking both. So in our assessment, it's really comprehensive. It looks at both military reductions and its impact on Redstone and the DA civilian workforce reduction on Redstone, okay? And when you put both of those together, our assessment is still that there's minimal impact. First, on the DA workforce side, as I talked about, because of our tools that we have available and what we've been doing since 2012. And then on the military side, which I haven't talked about much, although the Army has stated that there will be some separations of officers and non-commissioned officers, the population of military on Redstone is such that I still think, as does the command and the leaders here at Redstone, that the impact will be minimal. So there's an ongoing manpower study that Department of the Army is doing right now, and we think we'll have better resolution over the next several months. And probably about the September timeframe, we'll be able to give better fidelity on the DA civilian workforce specificity that I think you're looking for. On the military side, I know what those cuts are. Those are known across the Army now based on the announcements that the Pentagon has made today, and that's why I stick by the assessment that minimal impacts to Redstone. Does that answer your question? Okay. If you remember, the announcement is really focused on force structure, and so it's predominantly focused on the military force structure that we have. Well, the DA civilians are an enabler to that. So once you determine what the force structure looks like, then you can subsequently do the manpower analysis on the specificity of the enablers associated with that. And our great DA workforce is a critical part of this whole thing, but you have to work the force structure before you can figure out what the civilian cut would be. And the other thing I want to say is that, and I want to make sure that everybody understands this, is that even though we'll have fidelity in September of 15, this does not mean that we're going to walk up to an employee and say, you're going to be cut, thank you for your service, move on. Remember, these cuts are programmed over fiscal years 16 and 17, and again, just because we cut a position doesn't mean that's a space, not a face, okay? And so again, our method to get down to that level will be through natural attrition, the management tools I talked about, and through unfilled positions themselves. Sure. Yeah, so the announcement today to take us to 450 is absolutely a done deal, okay? But as I caveated earlier, with sequestration looming, there is a potential that we go lower to 420,000 soldiers in the active component, and correspondingly another reduction on the DA civilian side. So we don't know. Yeah, so let me just tell you, I'm a firm believer that at this point, given where we are and what we know at this point, and this is just not only Redstone Arsenal's position, Army Materiel Command's position, but also the Army's position, that we are comfortable in saying that we can get to our end strengths regarding DA civilians, right, through natural attrition, voluntary separation tools, okay, where people voluntarily say, hey, I want to separate, I want to retire early, and then based on also unfilled positions that currently exist. Well, let me just start by saying that Army Materiel Command could not do what we do in terms of being the premier provider and deliverer of global readiness to our Army and Joint Force without our great Department of the Army civilian workforce. Unequivocally, hands down. Now, let me give you some numbers. I mean, 95% plus of our organization is DA civilian, and 5% is military. So we have a truly vested interest in making sure that that 17,000, when it's apportioned out to AMC, is as low as it possibly can, because it affects our ability to do our mission. So we have a stake in this, and we understand how important the DA civilian workforce is. And I will add, not just AMC, but all of Redstone Arsenal commands, okay?